Some of my first and strongest memories of gaming are of Pokemon Yellow and Pokemon Blue. Both my brother and I had Game Boy Colors, and we played so much Pokemon together in the house, on car journeys, and even sat out in the street with all our friends, trading, battling, leaning over to show each other cool Pokemon we just found or cheer each other on during tough battles. I still remember the excitement when one of our friends announced that they'd managed to get a Mew from somewhere, still not really sure where they got it from, and the fun of crowding around a couple of Game Boys when our two strongest friends had a battle. It's no wonder then that over my life I found myself drawn to handheld gaming. I've owned most major consoles and had multiple gaming PCs, but playing something handheld always seems to hit the spot for me just a little bit more. Don't get me wrong, I have enjoyed plenty of incredible home console or PC games over my life, multiplayer phenomenons like Halo 3 or Call of Duty 4, and I've enjoyed plenty of amazing narrative single-player games, particularly from Sony, but I still spend most of the time gaming on handheld devices, and I've accumulated a lot of them over the years. Handheld consoles have undergone a radical transformation in the last decade, starting with the Nintendo Switch. Now, Nintendo always had consoles for both the home and the handheld markets, but with the Switch they were the first not just to try but to really successfully bring these two markets together. Now we've gotten the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally, both of which play the PC counterpart to the console-like Switch. My YouTube channel has been going for a whole year now, and while originally I started off talking about all sorts of different things from finance to productivity, I managed to settle into gaming thanks to getting a Steam Deck, talking about that, and that video did pretty well for me, and from there I've just talked about gaming ever since, and I've been really enjoying it. My channel has mostly been about handheld gaming with just a little bit of home consoles sprinkled into the mix, but for this 1 year special video I wanted to talk about why it is that I love handheld gaming so much. I hope you enjoy it. Gaming has always been a bit of a social activity to me, where the times I have enjoyed a game the most seem to be the ones that I've played with others, or at least at the same time as others. I already talked about Pokemon Yellow, Blue, the Game Boy Color versions, and it went on as well with some of the Game Boy Advanced versions. My brother and I really got into Fire Red and Leaf Green and Ruby and Sapphire as well. But it also happened quite a few years later with the release of Pokemon Soul Silver and Heart Gold. Soul Silver is my favourite Pokemon game of all time. It's still my favourite. None of the modern ones have replaced that for me. Soul Silver is the best one. And I think the reason for that, as well as it being a really good game, is that all of my friends from school got just as into the game as I did. We all rode the bus together to school, we each had our DSs, copies of Soul Silver or Heart Gold, talking about what Pokemon we were raising, trading, battling, the same kind of stuff as I said with Pokemon Yellow and Blue. And we also got really into the whole Pokewalker thing, taking your Pokemon out with you, and I think you could catch some specific Pokemon using the Pokewalker. I kind of think that we were after maybe a Pikachu that could learn surf or fly. That might have been the first time that that kind of thing was introduced, and we found that really exciting, and so we were all trying to get it, see who got it first. And again, it's just a really strong memory for me because of playing something handheld on the bus to school every day, talking about it with my friends. But Pokemon's not the only time that happened. One of my favourites was Advanced Wars. I remember taking my clear Game Boy Advance to school, setting up a 4-player game of Advanced Wars, and then just handing the console around in the playground so that we could each take our turn. I still have both the original Game Boy Advance and my Advanced Wars cartridge, although my Game Boy Advance does need a little rescuing. These days I don't get to do a lot of gaming with friends or family. I still sometimes play games on a Friday night with my college friends, but apart from that, not too much with other people. Every now and then though, my partner and I will find a game that we both actually want to play, and then we do play it together, but this is almost always a game that we can play in handheld. Last year we both played quite a lot of Disney Dreamlight Valley. Now this game has no multiplayer component at all, but that didn't stop us from being sat on the sofas, her on Switch, me on Steam Deck, swapping tips for quests or how to get the little animal companions, showing off custom outfits we just made, or chuckling at what one of the Disney characters said. Now, I'm not saying that it wouldn't have been possible at all to do this on home consoles or PC, but for our situation it wouldn't have worked so well. Only one TV in the living room, PC upstairs. Playing the game handheld is really what made that experience for us. There's not too many split screen games these days, but every now and then a game comes along that we both want to play, and handheld is the way that we do that. The same thing happened a few years back with Animal Crossing, we really got into that. And I've mentioned it before, but even if we're not playing something together, most of the time I'd rather be in the same room than go upstairs to my PC, and because you can play handhelds anywhere, that works perfectly. Just as a little aside, I'm hoping Fae Farm might be the next game that we both get really into. It's the kind of game that my partner is normally into, and I think I'd enjoy it too, so I've got my fingers crossed for that. Now, along with the social aspect, handheld consoles just feel a bit more charming to me, more unique, more personal to the owner, to you. If you have a Game Boy, it's yours. This is a little bit abstract, it's the hardest part of the video to explain. It's all really thoughts and feelings and my own personal ideas, but it kind of works the same way with other handheld devices. So if you take your phone, for example, my phone isn't actually unique. There's hundreds of millions of phones the same as mine all over the world, but I picked my phone, I picked exactly which one I wanted, I picked the color, I put my chosen apps on there, I use it for whatever I want to do, it's got all my personal photos, I've picked the screensaver, the background, that kind of thing. All of those things make it unique to me. And so something about that, even though other people do have the same phone, it feels more like mine. And I feel the same way about handheld consoles. Especially smaller ones that you can take them around with you, it feels more like yours and much more personal to you. Something about being able to hold it in your hands changes things, because I've never really felt the same way about a home console. My PlayStation, for example, just feels exactly the same as everybody else's PlayStation. You do get special edition home consoles, PlayStations and Xboxes, and some of them do look very cool. I really think that the latest Spider-Man 2 PlayStation looks amazing. But if you compare that to the customization of handhelds, you've got things like different coloured Game Boys, the sheer number of special edition 3DS consoles, different Switch editions or different Joy-Cons. Some handheld consoles have themes like on the 3DS. The Steam Deck also has loads of different themes, and you can apply loads of skins to the Steam Deck, and I will very often see posts or videos online of people who applied a new skin to their Steam Deck. You know, they might be super colourful or have like a really cool design to it, and I often think, wow, their Steam Deck is really cool and it's really unique. And I think that this personalization, customization, and just the consoles generally being smaller means that handheld consoles lend themselves really well to collecting and building a collection of consoles. Now, of course, I'm not saying that you can't collect home consoles, I know plenty of people do, but what I mean is that I feel like if you are a home console collector, there's not reasons to have multiples of one console. You probably have maybe one of each generation of consoles, so you might have a PlayStation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or you might have an SNES, an NES, a Wii U, a Wii. I don't think there's much of a reason to have, for example, multiple PS3s or multiple Wii U's. However, on the handheld side of things, I feel like it is much more likely that you're going to collect multiple of the same console because you have variants. Like I said, the different color of Game Boy or multiple 3DSs of different special editions. And the same with the Nintendo Switch. There are people who collect all the different Nintendo Switches. I don't know if anybody else has seen it, but there was a video from a guy called Beat 'em Ups on YouTube where he's collected almost every single Nintendo Switch. I don't feel like you'd get that so much with a home console. Now, I have brought up the Steam Deck a few times in this video already, and I think really it's fair that we take some time in this video to talk about this incredible machine. It is by far the thing that I've played the most this year, more than the Nintendo Switch, more than the PlayStation 5, much more than the Xbox, and also more than the 3DS. It's fair to say that the Steam Deck feels like the future of handheld gaming, and that future is very, very bright. We are now living in a world where you can play almost any game in handheld. And I know that some other companies like Aya Neo were doing it first, but the Steam Deck felt like the first one to really popularize the idea of a handheld PC. There are a few weird issues with certain online-only games, but you can basically play the majority of all PC games on Steam or even off Steam on the Steam Deck. Even modern games coming out this year can be played. Sure, for some of the games like Diablo 4, you might have to make some sacrifices in graphics or frame rate, but a lot of them the Steam Deck can handle just fine, and with the sheer number of smaller indie titles coming out, games like Dredge, they just run perfectly on the Steam Deck. Plus, finally being able to suspend and resume PC games is such a great feature. I've now completely changed the way that I play thanks to the Steam Deck. Most of the time, if I pick another console that I'm going to play, it's for exclusives. You know, God of War, Final Fantasy, Tears of the Kingdom. Anything else, I will look to see if it's playable on the Steam Deck, and luckily for me, it almost always is. Even if a game is coming out on the Switch as well, I will usually go for the Steam version. Sure, the Steam Deck is a bit bigger and heavier, but I like knowing that it'll run better. I enjoy checking out Steam achievements or knowing the playtime a little more accurately than what the Switch gives you. And, you know, sometimes PC games can be a little cheaper, not always, but enough that it's a bit of a factor for me. And just going back to games running better, I recently picked up Monster Hunter Rise on Steam in the Steam sale, and that game runs 60 FPS on a Steam Deck, which actually feels incredible, and I think it would feel kind of terrible to go back to playing it on the Switch now. So, I said the Steam Deck was the future of handheld gaming, and I think I can give you a good example of what I meant. Just in the last few months, these are the games that I've played on the Steam Deck. I've played Diablo 4, Marvel's Midnight Suns, Red Dead Redemption 2, Monster Hunter Rise, Baldur's Gate 3, Fallout New Vegas, and I've even tested out Final Fantasy XIV. I mean, come on, just how crazy is that list? You've got some very new games, you've got some very old games, you've got some really graphically intensive games, and I mean, you've even got an MMO on that list. Imagine a few years ago telling somebody that not only would they be able to play all of these games on one console, but that it would be a handheld console. They would think you were crazy, and I wouldn't blame them at all, but I tell you what, I'm absolutely loving it. And I think it only gets better from here. The ROG Ally has emerged as a competitor, and it seems like Lenovo might be making something as well, but what I'm really hoping for is I'm really hoping for Valve to make a successor to the Steam Deck in a few years' time. And we haven't even really talked about emulation. PS2, GameCube, even some Nintendo Switch games, you can emulate all sorts of stuff on the Steam Deck. I've had some fun dipping into my old childhood favourites, things like Return of the King or Spider-Man 2, and at some point I'd like to try games that I missed, like Thousand Year Door. So I think by now I might have gotten my point across about the Steam Deck and what I think of this amazing machine. It really has changed a lot of things for me. If I was only allowed to play one console going forwards and I didn't have access to anything else, I would definitely pick the Steam Deck. However, there is one specific use that I don't really like doing on the Steam Deck, and so instead I turn to a bit of a different device. You may have noticed when I was talking about the Steam Deck's emulation, I left out some particular systems like Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, and instead I listed more of the home consoles. Now, this isn't because the Steam Deck can't emulate these systems, it definitely has the power to do so, but it just doesn't feel right to me. The Steam Deck is too big. Playing a Game Boy Advance game on that screen and holding something that size, I can't do it for some reason. And so instead I turned to this, my Anbernic RG35XX. To me, this is the perfect device for playing Game Boy games on because it basically feels like playing a Game Boy again, but brought into the modern age. It also works pretty well for PS1 games too, since none of those really used a joystick, but I've been playing Pokemon on it recently. Now, this is 100% nostalgia talking, but Pokemon to me just feels better when it's played with pixel graphics on a smaller device that you can just pocket and take with you anywhere that you want to go. And that's definitely going back to my childhood, like I said, where we used to play Pokemon all over the place, so that's why it feels like that to me. The problem is if you've played Pokemon your whole life like I have, well then the base games might feel a bit easy to you, and so I've turned to the modding scene for this. This is Pokemon Radical Red. The 4.0 version just came out recently, and it's basically Pokemon in the Fire Red style, but with loads of modern Pokemon and modern features brought in. Oh, and some absolutely crazy difficulty levels, like it's really, really hard, but I'm determined that with the 4.0 version I will finally beat it. I've also been trying out a few other games, some recommended to me by friends, and I'm also considering playing some older games that I've never gotten to before, things like Castlevania, or maybe something like Chrono Trigger if I think it looks good on this screen size. I'm not too sure yet. The Anbernic is just absolutely perfect for those retro handheld games that I can play absolutely anywhere that I want. It's really easy to put in a pocket or throw in a bag. I mean, look at the size of it. And it can even suspend and resume multiple games using the Garlic operating system, so you really can play anything for either a few minutes or a few hours, depending on how you want to do it. Between these systems, the Anbernic, the Steam Deck, throw in the 3DS and the Switch, I can basically play anything that I want in handheld these days. So handheld gaming has changed so much over the years, and it's gotten really, really exciting. As someone whose first console was a Game Boy Color, going from that to things like the Steam Deck and the Anbernic is just incredible, and it gives us options no matter what we want to play or how we want to play it. These devices were my introduction to a hobby that I've had for my whole life, and I can't wait to see what comes next.
But what about you? You probably clicked on this video because you love handheld gaming just as much, if not more, than I do. And if that's true, I'd be really interested to hear some of your stories about your favourite handheld consoles, some of your favourite handheld games, and your best memories with them. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.